Welcome to ongoing anti-media coverage here. This is hour two, and I don't know if you're paying attention to the media, but there's been a coronation that's gone on with liberal ideologue Rachel Maddow announcing that she has Donald Trump's vaunted tax returns. And then the White House had to go into damage control and say, oh, well, they released it. And at the end of the day, I'm trying to find more information on it. At the end of the day, it looks like basically we're finding out he paid $38 million off of like 150. Who cares? That's my takeaway from it. Who cares? This is really what we're going to focus in on. This is the big takedown of Trump. I have some terrible news for you liberals. If you're going to want to try and take down Trump, you're going to have to do a lot more than show that he only paid $38 million, which quite frankly sounds like a lot to me. But of course, I make negative money, so I'm not one to remark on that. But, there's bigger things going on, and we're going to talk about some of them today, which is the new Trump war machine. I think that's way more, relevant and interesting to what's going on in the world right now. The Deep State 2.1, which is going to be the, reappropriation, Trump's take on the Deep State. The Deep State is in deep shit, right? And, but I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something on these taxes thing. We got DB Schwartz as my co-host here. DB, am I missing something here, or is this just a bunch of bullshit?
I don't know, man. I mean, the only thing that he may not want to do with current taxes is possibly show a connection with Russia, but at a point,
if you show the connection to Russia, obviously that'd be a huge deal. But
well, maybe because the guy he's a mogul, so
yeah.
There's a couple reasons why he wouldn't want to show it. One is that it could possibly show he's not nearly as wealthy as he says he is, which has always kind of been a rumor. And I did some digging, and I did find out, from officially what the guy's balance sheet is. He's worth $4 billion, and he has $2 billion in debt. So he's worth $2 billion. So he's a billionaire. Has he made some bad mistakes and leveraged himself? Sure. I mean, as part of his run for the presidency, because him and other people like Sheldon Adelson and other people who are connected to brick and mortar investments we're about to see those things become worthless in a centralized global kind of economy. You know what I mean? I think what we're seeing here is it was a coup. It was like a counter coup to 2001, where this banking elite took over and the tides turned again, because now the other side, which were not blue blood, old blood family types, they were more military, got the advantage because the NSA literally had every single shred of data, including the CIA. So you can imagine how that kind of backfired.
Looks like a 25% tax hike. That number, or a 25% tax rate. That number is coming from a friend of mine. He's going to call in here in a little bit. And but I think the story here, and we were talking about it last night. I mean, the mainstream media has their bells and whistles and their Pavlovian dog whistles that they're going to try and get everyone to pay attention to, because Rachel Maddow's ratings have gone up a lot since Trump took office. And this, at the end of the day, this is about corporations making money. Don't ever forget that. But the big-ish story here is that a lot of these people that voted for Trump, thinking that he was going to be less of a military guy, less of a war guy, have just been pistol whipped, because what is he's adding another 10% to the military budget. Drone strikes have gone up 432% since Trump took office. He's selling arms to Saudi Arabia again, which even Obama, who is the most drone happy, weapon happy president we've had in a while, even he had put a freeze on weapons of Saudi Arabia. And now Trump is going ahead with these weapon sales in this ongoing war with Yemen, which is just littered with war crimes and human rights violations. It's an absolute nightmare. I mean, it's up there with Syria at this point right now. And and then it looks like he's getting more aggressive on Syria. And of course, these is under the auspices of him saying, well, I always said I was going to be tough on ISIS. But, these terrorist groups, like we were talking about last night, these are amorphous enemies that can never really be defined. Like, this has always tripped me out, and maybe someone can help me with this. Can anyone really remember the transition point where Al Qaeda turned into ISIS? Don't you kind of know how that somewhere around mid-decade in the aughts, all of a sudden it wasn't Al Qaeda anymore. It was ISIS. It happened so seamlessly. I would love to just make a whole short documentary tracing the evolution of how we stopped talking about Al Qaeda and started talking about ISIS, because it's really quite phenomenal. Uh, but to me, that's the story here, is that we have yet again a war empire that's going to go full throttle. And right now we're getting every indication that Trump is going to be a wartime president. He is not going to pull back on Obama's drone strikes. In fact, his drone strikes have gone up. This is an article by Kerry Wedler on the Anti-Media. He's a great journalist. And so the Nobel Peace Prize winning head of state, Barack Obama, had ordered 10 times more drone strikes than Bush. And estimates, this is shocking. I can't believe this. Estimates late in Obama's presidency showed that 49 out of 50 of the victims were civilians. Let that sink in for a minute. 49 out of 50 of these victims were civilians. It's just sickening. Yeah, you cannot call yourself an Obama fan and look at yourself in the mirror and hear something like that. I don't care who you are. I voted for the man twice, and I'm disgusted by my second vote. I'm not disgusted by my first vote because fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice. I'm not well educated. I don't know, but now it's 2015, and it's reported that 90% of drone casualties were not the intended targets. But drone strikes have gone up 432% since Trump took office. Jesus, he's only been in office a month. I mean, what is this, a purposeful effort to just launch it up?
I think maybe at a point, Jake, it may come out, and I hate to, I even hate to broach the subject, but I don't think they're doing it on his order anymore at all.
Oh, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at this point.
I think they're off the rails completely at this point. Obama gave him a pretense to try to pretend they weren't in control, but the cat's out of the bag now. So why not just give the green light to anybody that matches the metadata logarithm? Because, like I said, the gig is up, man. The only thing left right now is the mop up. The mess has already been made, and the problem is that you have at least, God, I don't even want to put a percentage on it, but several 100 million people in the U.S. have no clue what's going on. And when this hammer does come down, and it will inevitably come down, what you're seeing now is equivalent to a high-rise on fire and people trying to put it out with buckets. I mean, you're not going to do it. No matter what you do, you can only slow down the inevitable fall. And when it does fall, and we talked about it yesterday, it's not going to be televised. It's not going to be advertised. There's not going to be a warning. None of those things work, and none of those things matter, because to the elite, the people in charge of the systems that would give you the impending doom warnings, they don't want to cause a panic. They want to go to their island farm or their underground base or wherever they need to go to get safe, and make sure them and their family and whoever's important to them is protected, and then when everything falls apart, it falls apart. So
The
I
revolution will not be
no.
televised, but it will be tweeted and tumbled.
Well, that's assuming that we even have an infrastructure that's going to be putting that out anymore. I mean, I think everybody realizes that the I guess we can say the clarion call of the fall of Western civilization will be the day the internet goes out.
Well, people set up, I mean, that's the beauty of the internet is that it's not centralized. So you can set up de facto decentralized hubs by which you could, use the internet. So there will still be online transmissions happening. It just won't be on MSNBC.com, like the major power, the media structure will collapse. And yeah, that's, I mean, we talked about this last night, and I want to get more into it tonight. To circle back around to a previous, the United States is nearly doubling its military presence in Syria. So that's on top of the other stats that I put out there. I mean, he is ramping it up. So why do we give a frog's fat ass what his tax rate was? I mean, look, if you got something, put it out there. I'm all for it. I mean, I'm a quasi journalist. If you got
If you
something,
think he's more corrupt than the Clinton Foundation, you are insane. I mean, we are comparing apples to oranges. We're comparing a robber baron to an ideologue, and this is somebody whose ideal is just pure and unbridled power through corruptive means because she's a thug in a pantsuit, and her husband is the same. They both became lawyers to go on the other side of the law and know how to skirt around the issues and stay out of jail and make a lot of money. All anybody has to do is investigate the Rose Law Firm. You're going to see where she made initially $1,000 investment into 100,000. That was insider trading. That was her seed money. With $100,000, she was able to start paying who needed to get paid to start winning big cases and making a lot of money in connections and getting people that raped kids off and all kinds of horrible, heinous stuff. And these tax things, this wild goose chase by the liberal media, just shows that we had a regime that ran things for as long as most of us have been alive listening. And this is the first guy that is not part of that regime. People, when they say he's not draining the swamp, that may be true, but it may also be impossible to do, and especially in your first year, let alone your first term. And
right.
he's a DC outsider, but he's a New York insider, and that's a big difference. It represents a power shift. People
Well,
got
look, I
him
will
into power.
say, this has been we've gone back and forth on this for hell almost a year now. We have slightly differing opinions on the existential nature of Trump, but I think we're pretty close to the same on it. Look, I am all for the idea that Trump is, trying to dismantle some kind of power structure. Um, and I know that he has to play the game. I mean, that's what everyone said about Hillary Clinton on the left, which is, oh, well, she has to play the game. You have to be corrupt to play the corrupt game. At the end of the day, I don't think anything can save this sinking ship. I mean, we're just, what we are? We're the band on the Titanic as it was sinking. Like we're just trying to make things a little bit more pleasant. As
Except that there's a big difference with the Titanic, which was that the richest man in the world went down with that ship, and he gave up a seat on a lifeboat for a woman or a child. He didn't let the fact that he was the richest man in the world affect
that's
his
one
morals.
specific, that's one specific story. There was probably also someone taking a shit in the lower floor while the ship was going down. I mean, there's all kinds.
Definitely. I just mean it was a different era, and there's
Yeah,
not going to be anybody giving up their seat that has purchased it through ill-gotten gains. That's what the name of the game is.
yeah,
That's what the bailout was about. The bailout was
yeah.
because they
The
knew that the
bailout
system was insolvent. They
and
knew it was going to crash.
and that was really, I don't know if you've seen Inside Job, the documentary, but that bailout. Actually, no. I'm sorry. That documentary is about the financial crisis and not the. Wait, is it about the bailout also?
Well,
Have you?
no, that's the Big Short.
Okay,
So
well, that one's fiction and one's documentary. Either way,
right.
the bailout and the whole financial crisis and the bailout is one of the great, uh, you know, pillage and loots in history. I mean, it'd be hard to find a more egregious example of corporatism than what went down there. And the fact that they're doing the same thing, and here's another thing that Trump is doing that pisses me off. He's putting back into place a lot of the same people and a lot of the same rules that allowed that to happen in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, make no mistake about it. He's beholden to different interests. If you look at who funded him, it's a big, huge compilation of Goldman Sachs and hedge fund people that are at an upper echelon. I mean, like I said, Trump's probably a billionaire, but he's not sitting on 10 or 20 or 30 like a lot of these backers of his are, where they have silly money and they can fund anything. And they wanted him in because the guy's pro business at all costs. He wants to rebound our economy to be back in the 50s and 60s heydays when a man could go and make enough money to buy a house and everything else, and kids had college, and the world was,
Oh, is
you
that
know,
what the billionaires want? They want us middle classers to be able to.
no, that's what he wants because
I
he will
I
make more
believe
money.
that. I believe Trump wakes up every morning and goes, "I want that middle class family to be able to buy their house."
Yeah, I doubt it. But what I do think is he would make more money if the middle class was burgeoning as opposed to dying because like I said, there's two camps of investment. There was a camp that said, screw America, we're gonna destroy it, we're gonna pillage it, we're gonna pull everything out of it, and then we're gonna crush it. And the very simple reason for that is the Second Amendment makes America tyranny proof until they convince us to take those out of our hands. So they've been trying forever. Hopefully, they'll never succeed in my lifetime. But that's the very, very heart of it. If they could have taken over America through, let's face it, subterfuge, because you can't go against our military. You have to convince the people to just give up their rights. And they tried so hard with 9/11, but the thing is, they screwed up. They left tracks and they didn't complete the job. And this is the result. The result of them botching 9/11 was Trump.
Yeah. Oh man, God in heaven, God's green earth. What have we done? What have we
We've
done?
sat around and watched really horrible TV and ate GMO foods and gotten cancer
Yep.
while a run amok elite that are the richest, most powerful people the world's ever seen have created a virtual nightmare ready to pop.
I realized that earlier today that this literally is the most powerful group that has ever existed on the earth. Like it makes the Roman Empire look like a Lego castle. This is the most powerful combined entity that the earth has ever seen. And we don't even have advanced artificial intelligence yet, you know?
Well, we don't, but they do.
Well, yeah, I mean, they say they wouldn't, but uh, we actually have a caller who's going to be calling in. And here's the great thing about this caller who's calling in. His name is Daniel Shannon. He's actually a childhood friend of mine. Grew up with him in Arkansas. So he is actually keenly aware of the different layers of Clintonian propaganda that have fluctuated through Arkansas. And he's also, very much he's a politico. He's a renegade politico, and I'll explain him a little bit more better from his own mouth. But Daniel, how you doing tonight, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing all right. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing all right, man. I mean, it's raining in Portland, and I like rain, but I don't like it when it's raining in my soul. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
Daniel, we've kept in contact over the years, and I've always viewed you somewhat as correct me if I'm wrong, but you're a libertarian, correct?
I sort of skew that way, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I hate labels. I mean, I'm technically an anarcho-syndicalist, but what the hell does that even mean, you know? But I remember us talking about, and this is something me and DB talk about all the time, which was the incredible implosion of the DNC. I mean, if you remember back 5 months ago or 6 months ago or whatever, everyone was talking about how it was the Republicans that were collapsing. It was the greatest collapse in political history. And then it was actually the Democrats that collapsed because they sabotaged the insurgent outsider, the insurgent populist outsider. And you were watching that from ground zero a little bit, not really at ground zero, but you're down in Arkansas, right?
Yeah, yeah. Um,
And how did
well,
and you know Arkansas is, for those of you who don't know, Arkansas as a metropolitan center that goes left, but it also has a surrounding area that was all Trump country. So what was the scene down there like?
well, I mean, Arkansas was very decidedly Trump country this time around. I uh, Going back to what you were talking about with Sanders and Clinton. Um, I saw that the Democrats in 2008, according to a Gallup poll, 40% of respondents to the poll said they were Democrats. Last year, it's down to like 25% of respondents say they're Democrats, and there wasn't an increase in
Oh,
Republicans really. They stayed around 30%, um, give or take a few. But just a big hemorrhaging of Democratic voters who are now calling themselves independent. And I think this is a result of the kind of changes to the party that have happened since the 90s with the kind of Clinton neoliberal globalist taking over and, really kind of ditching any sort of welfare state type of ideology for privatize everything, type
yeah.
of worldview. And, I really think Sanders could have done hell of a lot better than Hillary Clinton. I mean, Trump. I was telling people Trump would win because he was attacking NAFTA. I mean, it's ridiculous. But Donald Trump was the candidate who was like skeptical of capitalism, basically, or how he presented himself. I mean, it's a farce, but
Yeah.
that's that was kind of his thing. It's like, oh, I care about the people in the Rust Belt. Oh, I want to bring the factory jobs back. While Hillary Clinton's like, she supports the TPP, right? She supports
Right.
NAFTA. She didn't even go to campaign in Wisconsin. It was just
Which she
stunning.
lost, which she lost, you know?
Yes, it's just stunning arrogance.
Yeah.
And it's they went with Hillary because they thought she's the one that can win. She's the only one who can beat Trump.
No, they
But
went
really,
with Hillary because it's a syndicate. They went with Hillary because it's a crime syndicate and she was the mob boss.
well, I can understand that point of view, and I agree with you to a part. But uh, also, it was just kind of like it was like Bob Dole in 1996. It's just her turn.
Right.
She's done so much for the party. We don't have anybody else. Um, and you really got to wonder if Sanders had won. I mean, Sanders' campaign started out comical, right? When he announced there were only like a handful of people there, he did it outside in a park or something, and it was just like a really kind of pathetic announcement that, hey, I'm running for president, as far as the publicity it got. But he gave Hillary Clinton a damn good run for her money, and they really had to do a lot to make sure that Clinton won. And it's just,
And so what's the scene like down there now? Like now that Trump is in and he's got his goons running things, like is the feeling that because he's doing these immigration bans and he's still talking about the wall, is the feeling that he's doing a good job? Is that the feeling?
oh, well, you still see Trump signs around. Uh, I, I, I haven't, talked to too many people who are totally ecstatic about him. I mean, a lot of my friends kind of lean left. But I think there's just like a deep-seated hatred for Hillary Clinton here in this state and in
Yeah.
the country as well.
But it's
And
like over now. People got to get past that. And like
yeah,
Hillary's done. We don't like Hillary's done. We don't have to keep going back to Hillary. Like,
yeah. I'm just saying, these people who voted for Trump, maybe it was just because he's not Hillary Clinton.
right. Yeah. No, no. And I wasn't, I was directing that as a general. We don't have to keep going back to Trump, not your statement. But yeah. And I get it. I think that was why she was probably one of the worst candidates in history. But, I guess, all right. Yeah. I mean, I'm just trying to get I know that a lot of your friends are liberal, and I'm just trying to get a finger on the pulse of where the average mainstream Trump voter is feeling now and what they want him to do. I think a lot of people voted for him out of this kind of sense of like, let's be patriotic again, and also let's drain the swamp, and let's get establishment out of there. But once all of those kind of nebulous notions are gone and he's actually in the office, and he's actually got to start putting policy into place, what we see is that he's really just doing a lot of establishment things again. He's doing a lot of the same financial reform moves. He's growing the military, which, for God's sakes,
Yeah.
we don't need a bigger military. So I guess I'd love to.
Well, there's still like drain the swamp billboards up. I think there's a sense, I mean, maybe people haven't really come around to he's not draining the swamp or anything like that, but they have a sense that, the establishment is against him. All the media hate him.
Right,
They nitpick over nonsense like this Rachel Maddow thing, showing that he paid 25% of his income in taxes in 2005. I mean,
how much was he supposed to have paid? Like I mean,
well, I think like the max is somewhere around 30%, but there's all sorts of things you can do, right, to pay less.
So this is basically just like what you said. This is basically a non-story that's being used to these are just partisan politics, just the game that goes on. And guess who benefits from this? It's the mainstream media. They're the ones that are getting the ratings from this back and forth anti-Trump bullshit. And it's still deceiving people. Your average everyday people are watching MSNBC, CNN, and they're still being deceived as to what the real issues are. I mean, you have someone like Democracy Now! And, Amy Goodman does a pretty good job. And you have publications like The Intercept and the anti-media that are trying to really kind of put a spike through the general malaise and the general groupthink that's guiding us right now. But in general, people are falling right back into the same camps that they were falling for before. This is how Obama was allowed to be a war president for 8 years and a deportation president for 8 years. Let's not forget that Obama deported 2.5 million people. That was the most in history. And, so people are just so caught up in their celebrity star, this is my political candidate. And there's so many Trumpsters that are just like, there's nothing he could do. There's nothing he could do that would make them hate him. And it's the same as with the Obama people. And at the end of the day, it's like, what, are we really supporting a democracy right now, or are we supporting state corporatism?
Well, the answer is state corporatism, obviously. I mean, in the United States, any sort of welfare program, it's got to make a profit for corporations to pass muster. For instance, food stamps. It's actually subsidies for agribusiness. When Newt Gingrich had the contract with America, he was talking about doing away with food stamps, but literally like big agribusiness people came to him and were like, hey, we make money off of that. And so we still have food stamps, right? Because, I mean, it does have the effect of feeding some poor people, but it also makes a profit for Archer Daniels Midland. So we have that. Instead of universal health care, we get, the Obamacare, which is, a lot of subsidies for the health insurance industry. And, of course, we're about to get Ryan Care, which, or maybe we won't get it. I mean, it's pretty unpopular even with Republicans. But, the Republicans aren't moving in a significantly better direction. And it's just that seems to be the way it goes. If it makes money for the wealthy, then they'll throw some crumbs at the plebs. But that's about the extent of it.
And I know DB or DB might agree with me on this. Like, obviously, I think it'd be better if Bernie Sanders had been president. But at the end of the day, he would have faced congressional and Senate opposition. I don't think you could have gotten anything done. And you're still going to see. I cannot imagine a situation. I can't imagine a candidate coming in that's going to be able to break up the state corporatism that's running things right now.
But look what he was able to do when he went into coal country. And he was able to basically tell people, everything Trump was telling you he was going to do and make things better for you. How's that going to work? You can't just make jobs out of thin air. Even if they kill the EPA, you can only mine so much coal. You can only find so much oil and gas. It's not going to rebound our economy. What rebounds our economy is people getting high-tech jobs. That's free education. You're never going to be able to get that without that. And then the free health care is, honestly, if we don't go Medicare for all, we're going to go broke. Like, it's just killing us right now.
Yeah, the states are not going to be able to support Medicaid. It's going to be an absolute nightmare. And it's, of all things to cut, Jesus God, there's so many things we could cut. Why would you cut, like, these safety nets? I don't understand why.
Because he thinks he's going to make it so that everybody that works hard can get a good job and pay for everything with their wages. And that was true when there was like 3-4 billion people. There's like twice as many people now.
Yeah.
Also back in the 50s and 60s, it was a lot different country as far as, the tax rates the wealthy paid. There was the whole Bretton Woods monetary system that kind of helped prevent capital flight and whatnot. And now it's like a race to the bottom with the rest of the world, with the globalized economy. You start trying to tax the wealthy to pay for social programs, they could just up and move, to another country, move their money. And it's just, there's just a lot of differences. Also, we were doing so great because the rest of the world was in shambles after World War II, and we were pretty much untouched, right? And our industries helped fuel the fixing Europe back up after the war, and Japan.
Well, DB's our resident World War II alt expert. What do you think about that, DB?
All you got to do today is just take a look at the financial markets. The only market up is the Nikkei. And what happened was, if you look back at World War II, how it really truly ended, we had to go in and clean up Hiroshima and Nagasaki with our Marines. 100,000 of them, by the way, got radiation poisoning. We had to rebuild Japan's economy. And then on top of that, we opened our markets to them, and they flooded our markets with made in Japan or made in Taiwan. And I know you guys know that stuff built from the 60s all the way into the 90s. It was all made in Taiwan, made in Japan, until China became cheaper. And then Clinton signed NAFTA. They cut Japan out because they didn't like our agreement that we signed in 52, which was really an armistice. And it's funny because it's all tied in, man. It's like, it's the same reason we've never actually once declared war or initiated a draft since the end of World War II. Because part of our peace agreement with Japan said if we ever declared war, then they would instantly declare war on us. So that was part of our agreement. And if you guys know anything about the global economy, you'll know that about 75% of our debt is actually owned by Japan. China only owns like 15 to 20%. And people freak out and go, China's going to call their debt. Who cares? It doesn't matter. We could collapse China's economy tomorrow and we would survive. The problem
I
is that
didn't
it's
know that.
Japan. Yeah. Japan owns a lot, and wouldn't you know it, South Korea owns about 10% of it. And it's all because World War II did not end in 45. It ended in 53 when the end of the Korean War, which was really World War 2.5. So everything we're seeing, like I forget what it was that the Bretton Woods Agreement said, but that's a moot point with BRICS. That's what everybody needs to understand. We're seeing a currency war bubbling to the top.
You know, another thing to remember, and we talk about this all the time, but it really can't be stated enough, is that we're about to see a cataclysmic change in the global economy based upon automation and artificial intelligence and all that stuff. And it can't be overstated enough, the fact that no one really knows how this is going to go down. How it's going to go down, that like 50%, another 50% of people suddenly won't have jobs. They're going to have to institute a universal basic income. It's going to have to happen, or there will be riots in the street. And so all of this talk about, and that's why I don't
But that's
understand
the chip, Jake.
these little cuts to Medicaid and Medicare. What are they doing? We're about to be underneath this hyper capitalism system. We're about to have a basic state of socialism because they're going to have to do a universal basic income.
And how do they control it without biometric chips?
Well, yeah, I'm not saying it's going to be utopian. I'm saying
You're going to get your dole. You're going to get your dole of like $1,200 a month to show up and have your chip scanned, and you're never going to get a job because you're never going to afford college. You're just going to have it's a survival lifestyle. I mean, that's what they want us to be reduced to worldwide.
And then if you want life extension, you can become an indentured servant to some corporation, some biotech company.
Which they just signed into law that if they're able to reanimate tissue, that the labor becomes the property of the corporation.
Wow.
And that's because if you remember a few years ago where they did an experiment and found out that they could do zombie or dead cells could produce more. So in other words, once a worker died and they reanimate them, they get more labor out of them when they're dead.
Wow. Made in machina. Made in machine.
Yep. Made by zombies.
All right. So I don't really know what I want to switch gears here to, but
let's talk about the Dutch election.
Okay. Yeah. Daniel, tell us what's going on with the Dutch election.
Well, okay. There's basically it looks like the far right nationalist party is going to win with their candidate Geert Wilders, but the way the system is set up, he might not be able to actually govern even if he gets the most votes, because it's like a coalition thing, and all these parties are claiming they won't have a coalition with them. But this is in liberal, tolerant Holland, right? The Netherlands, which is supposed to be some liberal utopia. And I think it's just indicative of a real kind of right-wing populist wave that we saw kind of with Brexit and certainly Trump's election.
Yeah.
And it seems to be happening globally across the Western world, but it doesn't even really stop there. If you look at what's going on in Turkey right now with Erdogan, he's kind of turning that country more authoritarian, doing away with the secularists. After that failed purge last year, he was able to purge a lot of the military and secular civil servants and stuff. And, he's kind of, talking about the glory days of the Ottoman Empire and shit like that. It's just going kind of crazy worldwide. In India, you've got Modi, who, has has a questionable history with regards to the Muslims. He's definitely this Hindu nationalist, and there
Don't
just seems
forget
to be a
they just went cashless too.
yeah. But it's just a real wave of something that is kind of reminiscent of the 1930s, right? I don't like to draw, Hitler comparisons all the time, but here in like the United States and a lot of other countries, the mainstream parties are kind of discredited, and people who looked like they never have a chance, like Mr. Wilders in the Netherlands, now have a serious chance of taking over, and it's just amazing. I mean, look at what happened to the Democratic Party. It's practically died out. There's no trust in America's institutions. The trust in the media is really low. Congress has an abysmal approval rating. Democratic Party has an abysmal approval rating. And it's just very reminiscent of Weimar Germany, where you had like these kind of establishment parties, and they just dropped the ball, right? People just lost faith in the system, and a third of the country was communist, a third of the country was Nazi, and then the other third of conservatives and liberals just couldn't get their fucking shit together. And it's just there's something very significant going on in this world, kind of breakdown of globalism itself, maybe, and a return to more identitarian kind of ideologies.
And that's what World War II was about too. It was the initial stab of globalism, and the nationalists lost by and large. At least on the European theater, they lost. But if you do any traveling in Asia, you'll understand that nationalism and statism are done harmoniously there, and there's a lot of pride in the country. Where opposed to here, the government's been trying to tell us forever, we're one world, we're one people, we're one government, one religion, sex doesn't exist. Identity politics are basically our modus operandi, and the reason empires do that is because they're about to crumble.
What are you trying to say, DB?
When Babylon fell, they did the exact same stuff.
Hey, Rome wasn't built in a day, but nor did it crumble in a day. It's going to take some time, and we're certain.
The problem is that Romans knew they were Romans, and here we have a lot of people that have basically zero loyalty. It's just a place to live, man, and that's basically why America's been an experiment, because it's tough to build a culture out of cultures. We've kind of just become this. It's not even a melting pot at this point. It's just like a strange, obscure painting.
You know what I think? I just realized something Trump could do that would make me very happy is, and this is a question The Intercept is asking, or Edward Snowden is asking, but if Trump is sincerely concerned about this wiretapping, then he should go in and he should fix the NSA's mass surveillance programs. He should go in and he should dismantle some of these intelligence agencies and their surveillance apparatus. That would make me very happy. But he won't do it because he wants that power.
Yeah. He's turning it already. He's turning it on his enemies.
I mean, Obama left him a very nice surveillance state. A very nice military state.
He opened up 16 new agencies that could share information right before he left office too.
Yeah, and I think Trump is a lot smarter than people give him credit for, or at least liberals seem to give him credit for. There's a lot of these things where it seems like he's oh man, the thought just left my head. How embarrassing. Let's move on. Sorry about that.
Well, I mean, my natural inclination next is to talk about how transhumanism is going to figure into this, because it's natural that people are going to want to start augmenting their intelligence. within the next 20 years. Because, dude, this world, I mean, DB, we've talked about this before. I mean, just the physicality of existence, it's tedious, you know?
It is, but
And
I will refuse to merge with anything man-made. I'm not gonna combine something that went through billions and billions of years of evolutionary, refinement with something that we created in the last 200 years from the Industrial Revolution.
are you
I
you Luddite?
No,
You know what
what
you
I
mean by
prefer
that.
is not like Zoltan, which is technological transhumanism, but I prefer biochemical transhumanism because there's a lot of ways that we can open up our mind. And once our mind is fully, if we can reach the full potential of what I know is in our physiological makeup,
Yeah,
of the architecture of the brain, of what we
I'm
have,
with you there,
you
man.
know. I mean, imagine all the things we
That's a
see
great
in
point.
sci-fi that are telekinesis, ESP. If those things were accessible through biochemical means, screw the transhuman people that have anything in them that's not biological. You'll just rip them to shreds.
But it's all in it's it's kind of one big package. Once we let one in, they're all going to come in. I mean, this is all about this
But
has to do
what's
with
superior, though?
this has to do with gene therapy. This has to do with
Yeah.
nanotechnology. Once you're biochemically re-engineering the brain, you're talking about a thin line between completely changing yourself. And but I'm with you. I mean, I think
Yeah.
we've talked many times before. The human race needs a spiritual awakening right now. And when I say spiritual, I don't mean any particular denomination or any particular conception of God, but we need a more overarching narrative of how our lives are interconnected with the earth and about how we are one with the earth. And until we get that kind of narrative, we're not going to be on the right track.
I
And
think you're talking about occultic science, Jake, which is where we're going to, which is where physicists at this point can't really even explain to each other how things are working at a level where they're
try and
talking.
explain it to
Yeah.
me, occultic science. What does that mean?
You know, the very tip of it is the spooky physics, which is the action at a distance. And when they
Right.
figured that they could find that a molecule would exist simultaneously at the same time, and then vice versa, they found that one wouldn't exist unless it was observed, meaning that the universe was a hologram. So
Quantum.
we're in a virtual reality of some other reality, and that reality's got other side realities that create dimensions. And I guess when we die, we go back to source, which would be what we really are. And that's the whole ayahuasca trip I took, which I think I told you when we met, dude. Yeah, but yeah, you go back to where you're playing your video game from, essentially.
Yeah.
And this is starting to be proved and provable with mathematics. It's just they can't explain it to people without sounding like kooks. And forever we've separated science and tech and religion, right? Because God has no place in the lab. But the truth of it is that there's things now they can't really the mind can't conceptualize.
Right.
You can't explain to a layman that something you're looking at doesn't exist if you're not looking at it because you're not really here and that's not really here.
Well,
Right.
Heisenberg had a good quote about that. Something along the lines of, "Your first sip from the glass of natural sciences leads you to atheism, but at the bottom of the glass, God is waiting."
Boom.
I thought that was a very interesting quote. But anyway, as far as spiritualism or whatever, we need some narrative other than you are just a consumer, a product, and a worker, right? You just exist to work for the capitalists, to buy the capitalist products, and to be advertised to by the capitalists.
Amen.
And so, I mean, with the kind of rise of the right around the world, I think a lot of it is they're offering some sort of identity, right, beyond just that. You're not just a consumer, you're Dutch, or
Right.
you're a Turk, et cetera, et cetera. And I think they're having a lot of success because the left,
But that's a
a liberal left around the world has, kind of jumped on board globalism.
They
yeah.
went too far to the left.
Yeah,
Like
well,
the whole
they got taken over by neoliberalism, but
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
this right nationalism identity is illusory. It's not going to last because at the end of the day, we cannot have a world ruled by hypercapitalism that succeeds. I mean, okay, maybe if you're an anarcho-capitalist and you believe that if the free market had complete control, look, my mind's open. I guess that's possible. I
Well,
mean.
it can keep going, but then it becomes Elysium, that stupid movie. I mean, that's the reality. You have people now at
Yeah.
the point where their discretionary income allows them to start pooling and building off-world, or at least now they're at least talking about building something in the middle of the ocean so they don't have to pay tax. Have you heard of this?
Right, that's the seastead.
Right. So a Chinese firm bid it out to them, and it's only going to cost them like 80 billion. And what is that between the top 400 people that own what? 3 trillion? I don't even know what they have. So it's nothing to them. And it's a crazy thing that I researched this and found out the exact same company in China that would bid this massive artificial island they're going to build on an atoll. They're actually going to build a private separate island to replace Gaza. So everybody should look into that online. There's a Chinese company that bid and won from Israel to build a private new in the middle of the Mediterranean so they can take over Gaza because Gaza is sitting on top of the world's biggest natural gas field. It's called the Goliath Field.
Man,
So that's what it's all about.
I have read some seasteading articles before. I have never heard of that theory. That is some crazy shit right there.
Yeah,
Wow.
because they can't, there's no peace. There's not going to be two states because they're not going to cut them in on this gas field. So they're going to pay China a few $1 billion. They're going to build some, I don't know, how big is Gaza? Not that big, right? They're just going to build some massive fake island.
I think seasteading and even in the future space-steading is a huge potentially lucrative boon to libertarian societies and free societies, freedom cells and whatnot. And I think, at some point, we're going to have some kind of controlled experiment of whether communities can exist without a state. And until we see that experiment and actually get a chance to gauge it, and I don't mean like without the state, but the state still fucking around with them and manipulating them and
Well,
whatnot.
we've sort of had an experiment with that in the Spanish Civil War, in like Barcelona and whatnot. You really had something akin to anarcho-syndicalism, and basically all the powers in the world combined to crush it. I mean, the Soviet Union was in Spain to help fight the fascists, but they spent much of their time fighting the anarchists.
And that's what I mean. Like I want to see that. I'm going to let you finish, but I want to see that experiment happen without a collusion of world powers crushing it.
Yeah. But I think it might have made a mark. I talked to people who were, visited Franco's Spain, and even during the Franco dictatorship, the later years, 60s, 70s, you'd see like these kind of acts of rebellion, like you're on a bus, there's no smoking signs, everybody is smoking, right? Sort of ignoring the state and its rules kind of mentality that might come out of their, previous experience. Anyway, I mean, we need to see this again without, Britain, France, Germany, Russia, and the United States colluding to crush it, right? As happened last time.
I was writing a story for a while called The Moon Kids, and it was about these. It was when I was very much being influenced by Cory Doctorow's books, like Little Brother and whatnot, and I had this story about these kids that basically created a space stead that was using solar energy. They were siphoning energy off a privatized solar panel outside the moon to fund their space stead. And it was just a piece of fiction. I never finished it, but I think in the future, man, if we can create graphene, if we can get some of these low cost new materials out there that can help us, space is a great, what do they call it? The final frontier. I mean, we could have a lot of very interesting anarcho-syndicalist movements happening in space.
Well, I think that's a pretty common motif in like sci-fi. The idea that the space colonists revolt against
Oh, absolutely.
oppressive Earth tyranny, right?
Highland's "The Moon is a Harsh Mistress" was basically a libertarian manifesto. So yeah, that's not it's not a new idea, of course, but I mean in reality, I mean it taking place in reality, not as a story.
Yeah. Life imitating art.
Right. DB, did you have a point there?
I was just gonna say there's a show they done recently. I think it's still going, called The Expanse, where we'd colonize basically the whole solar system, and the problem was that people did want to get away from Earth rule, and then Earth, of course, became the solar system's multi-planetary terrorist organization to try to make people toe the line, and it created a revolt and a rebellion, and it's gonna happen. I mean, people, I think, see that we have this scant window of opportunity. I don't know how bad it needs to get for people to realize they have a lot to lose, but they could take it all. They really could if they wanted to. It's all, the legal framework's all there, especially with this asset forfeiture crap they're trying out city by city. And yeah, man, all it takes is another depression, and they'll say, you know what, we're going to take your house, your car, everything you own, and your country needs it.
Oh, don't they have our damn genes patented and at this point, and nanocar?
Yeah.
They have
That's part of the new healthcare.
They have nanotubes patented. I mean, the building blocks of life.
Part of the new healthcare is going to be if you get federal subsidies that they own your genetic material, and you're going to have to provide that in a spit tube.
Oh, Jesus. God.
Well, Sweden already has something like that, I believe, where the kids, when you're born, they take a sample of your genetic material, to allegedly solve crimes and stuff like that.
We're up against the bell, man. That's our closing call. But hey, I want to thank you, as always. Take care of. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.